Introduction: growing up in a small Texas town can be a challenge, especially if you are gay, brown, black, mixed race, or an immigrant. When a Native American is shunned by his reservation and begins his senior year of high school in Grotto, a small town off of Interstate 10, somewhere between San Antonio and Houston, and then he suddenly comes face to face with the guy in his dreams, friendships blossom and bullies come out of the shadows. Join River, a Comanche and Apache Native American, Moonshine, another senior that is of Thai descent, Randy, a junior that is mixed race black and white, and Miguel, another junior and a Mayan immigrant from El Salvador, as they navigate a life of family death, prejudice, bullies, abuse, and more importantly, close family support, love, and friendships. The Lonely Shaman, written by JLGray, Chapter 1. The first day, it's River's first day in a new school, and his insides are full of butterflies. Outwardly, he appears calm, but he continuously fingers the eagle feather tied halfway down the long braid of hair on the right side of his face. The braid on the left is intertwined with thin buckskin strips strung through various sized glass beads of red, white, and blue. He laughs internally and thinks, a true patriot. He's almost 18, and he has never cut his hair. He's become quite creative in braiding it, so that it appears shorter than it actually is. Today, his braids only reach near the bottom of his rib cage. In reality, using a simple braid, they would almost reach the large belt buckle covering the lower half of his flat stomach. It's been about 5 years since he wore cowboy-cut jeans and boots. He thinks to himself, trying to fit in sucks, but when in Texas, one is forced to play the part. He would have never dressed like this in Montreal. He inwardly sighs, and his mind flashes back to his morning routine of daily food prep and exercise. At least he can keep that constant in his life. Thinking about the vigorous workout he had this morning, he stops fiddling with the eagle feather and runs his hand over his pumped chest through the tight t-shirt he chose to wear today. Nothing fancy, just a light gray tee with an upper torso and face picture of himself in a beaded vest, full feathered headdress, and war paint. No one will know it's him. His mind wanders to the handsome guy he passed in the hallway after arriving at the school earlier. River looked at the guy's face, and something sparked within him. He feels as if he's seen this guy before, but every time he reaches for the memory, it slips away from him. The handsome stranger only stared at his t-shirt, almost like he has seen it before. Impossible, this is the only one in existence. Slowly, he forces his mind back to the current place and time. In the principal's waiting room, just off his office, River slowly paces around the small room. He's too nervous to sit and wait, and he frequently looks at the principal's secretary and smiles. She smiles back, but he can't help feeling she looks at him and thinks he's a bit of a freak. The office door opens, and the principal steps into the waiting room. "You must be River." He holds out his hand, and River takes it respectfully and gives a firm shake, hoping he squeezes the man's hand with just the right pressure a grown man should use. "You can call me Dr. Garcia or Principal Garcia, whichever one you prefer. Please come into my office. I have a few questions for you before I give you your schedule and escort you down to your classroom." The principal, Dr. Garcia, is probably in his 50s and even dressed in a suit. River can tell he still has the physique of a rugby player. He's only about 5 feet 10 inches, and River is at least 2 inches taller than him. He has thick salt and pepper hair that has a perfect part on the left side at the top of his head and is just long enough to roll over in a stylish quiff for a man of his age. It is almost military short on the sides and back. He reminds him of a stereotypical army drill sergeant, but he can tell that Dr. Garcia is smart, not just well-educated, and speaks softly and respectful. He hopes this is not some kind of introductory tactic he uses to lull students into some type of trance or early submission. He quickly clears his wandering daydreams. River picks up his backpack that he had placed in one of the guest chairs and steps into Dr. Garcia's office. He takes a seat in the chair indicated and then glances toward the large window on the wall to his right. It overlooks a section of a student's parking lot, and he can see his white Jeep Wrangler. He must have missed something being said, because he suddenly hears his name spoken in a questioning manner. "River." River looks at the principal and says, "I'm sorry, Dr. Garcia. I'm just a little nervous and didn't hear what you said." Dr. Garcia smiles, and it seems sincere because his eyes also smile. There's no reason to be nervous. He gives River a second to relax before continuing. I just have some simple questions for you that I hope will allow me to know you a little better. River nods. From your paperwork forwarded to me by your grandmother, I see you are a legally emancipated minor. You are registering as River Soul, but your birth certificate and transfer documents list your legal last name as something completely different. I won't even begin to pretend I can pronounce it. Is it a Native American name? Your paperwork says that you were born here in Texas, not far from Eagle Pass, on an Apache and Comanche reservation that I didn't even know existed. At 13, you moved to Montreal, Canada, to live with your grandmother. What brings you back to Texas at this time, your senior year? It's very unusual to see a student transfer during their last year of high school. River swallows hard but maintains eye contact with Dr. Garcia. My name is a Comanche phrase or name that means river rapids that sparkle in the sunlight. It is much too difficult for others to pronounce, so my parents chose the name River Soul that I could use out in the non-reservation world. He breaks eye contact and looks down at his hands that seem to have a life of their own, fidgeting away in his lap. Just mentioning his parents gives him a sudden anxiety attack, but he quickly pushes it down and hides those memories in a deep, dark part of his brain. Dr. Garcia is curious and quietly asks, "Why did you choose to come to Grotto instead of returning to the reservation?" I actually wanted to stay in Montreal, but my grandmother is in the diplomatic corps with Canada, and she has been assigned to the consulate in Houston. She wants to keep me close. River states, "Then why aren't you in Houston? You're stuck out here halfway between Houston and San Antonio. With all the traffic running back and forth on I-10, it's about a 2-hour drive either way." Dr. Garcia then says, "What about your parents? Are they still at the reservation?" River turns his face and looks out the window at his Jeep. He has a sudden urge to run out there, jump in his Jeep, and drive off and never return. Instead, he defiantly looks at Dr. Garcia and says, "All of my family is dead. My grandmother is the only living relative I have." There's a stretch of silence before Dr. Garcia nervously says, "I'm sorry, River. I didn't know. That information is not in this record." He holds up a few pieces of paper and gives them an angry shake before practically slamming them down on his desk. River wants to change the subject and quickly says, "The family has some land about 15 minutes out of town. I want to experience how it will be to live on my own and to see if I'm actually able to do it. I guess you might say it's my self-imposed life lesson as a young adult. That's why I'm here. Regardless, the property is in my grandmother's name, and in a few weeks, when I turn 18, the title will be in my name. It's an inheritance from my parents, and I need to be there for a while." He seems to internally reflect for a moment before saying, "I don't think I could ever go back to the reservation, and I doubt if they would allow me to return." He waits for any reaction from Dr. Garcia, but there is none, so he says, "I really don't want to talk about it now." Not giving him time to reply, River suddenly asks, "Are there any more questions, Dr. Garcia? Isn't it about time for me to go to class? After all, I'm getting started a few weeks late as it is." Dr. Garcia slowly nods his head. "Yes, but before we walk down there, I want to talk about your hair." River snaps, "I've already submitted the paperwork for a religious exemption regarding my hair." Dr. Garcia puts his hand up to stall any additional comments. "I understand that, and I have no problem with it. My concern is how other students will treat you. This is a very small town, and this is the only school in the district. I have reviewed your history, and I'm worried that your choice of sporting activity could potentially lead to some fights. I don't want you hurting anyone when they piss you off." River chews his bottom lip for a few seconds. He knows the principal is referring to his training in mixed martial arts. Finally, he says, "I will do my best not to hurt anyone, but I will not be bullied. We do our best to prevent bullying, but no one can guarantee 100% compliance." Dr. Garcia confesses, "I trust that we both will do our part with regards to bullying." He gives River a look that requires a response. River eventually agrees, and he and Dr. Garcia leave his office. They hesitate just outside the door that opens onto the hallway. First period has just ended, and the hallway is full of students heading to their next class. River gets some strange looks from some of the students walking by. He can hear some girls laughing as they whisper to each other while glancing at him. Looking several doors down the hall, he sees 3 guys surrounding a smaller kid who appears scared. They seem to have trapped him against the lockers. He looks at Dr. Garcia, who only places his finger to his lips, asking him to be quiet. He then motions for River to look back at the larger guys. There's another guy standing behind them now, and he obviously says something to them because they suddenly turn around. River can't hear what is being said, but the 3 bullies quickly leave the lockers. The smaller guy, who looks like he could be a freshman, looks up at his savior and smiles before heading off to his second period class. The Good Samaritan is the same handsome stranger that was staring at his t-shirt just over an hour ago. The hero looks down the hall toward where River and Dr. Garcia are standing. River makes eye contact with him, and they remain locked in each other's gaze for a few seconds. River thinks, damn, he's got to be the most handsome guy I've seen since leaving Montreal. The stranger is about 6 feet tall, and River can tell he works out even from this distance. He has Asian features, but he can't be sure of his nationality. The stranger turns and walks back down the hall toward his class. Dr. Garcia, who is that? He motions with his head at the student walking away. That's Moonshine. Dr. Garcia responds. River laughs. No, really, what is his name? Now, Dr. Garcia chuckles. Just like you, that is the name he uses. He's Thai, or at least half Thai. I'm actually not sure. Anyway, he has one of those long names that most Americans can't even begin to pronounce. He goes by Moon. If you want to know his real name, you'll have to ask him. River asks, did you know he would intervene the way he did? I assumed he would, was Dr. Garcia's answer. When he was a freshman, even though he was almost as big as any of the seniors, he got bullied a lot because of his name, his race and ethnicity, and several other things. One day, he snapped while 3 seniors cornered him in the restroom and got aggressive with him. He took all 3 out in what was described as a blur of fists and feet. They were all on the football team, and it almost ended our season. Since then, people leave him alone, and he usually keeps to himself. He's a bit of an introvert, but one of the smartest students in this school. Now, come on, I want to introduce you to your class. River becomes increasingly more nervous as they approach the same classroom that Moon just entered. As soon as they step into the room, his eyes rapidly scan his surroundings. There are probably 25 students in the class. From what Dr. Garcia told him earlier, that's the entire senior class. The teacher standing at the blackboard stops talking and looks at them. All eyes turn to him, and he hears some hushed murmurs and soft, girlish giggles. Moon is reading a book and sitting alone in the back of the room at a table with 2 empty chairs to his right. It looks like he is being isolated from the rest of the class. That's probably self-imposed if he is truly an introvert. He looks up at River and quickly makes eye contact with him before looking back down at the book he was reading. River takes a deep breath and looks at the teacher as Dr. Garcia begins to speak. Ms. Wilson, I would like to introduce River Soul, a new student who recently moved here from Canada. Ms. Wilson is a short, plump woman in her 40s with naturally red hair and lily-white skin. Her makeup clashes with her pale skin, making her face appear like that of a toy doll with exaggerated large eyes and pouty red lips. Reading glasses hang from one of those cheap Walmart chains made for old ladies. The chain also contains a large rhinestone-encrusted cross. His first thought is a visual of the cross draped across her ear or pulling the glasses off to one side when she is wearing them. He holds in a laugh while he continues to look at her. She looks at River with a puzzled expression on her face before looking back at Dr. Garcia and reaches up to touch her own shoulder-length hair. Dr. Garcia knows what she is about to say, so he speaks before she has a chance to. River is Native American and has a religious exemption to wear his hair in the traditional manner. She doesn't say anything about his hair, but she suddenly has a sour look on her face. She stutters out, "Hello, River. Welcome to Senior English 4. River looks at her with a slight smile on his face. Before he can respond, she looks back at Dr. Garcia. He does speak English, doesn't he? River snaps at her. I speak several languages, thank you. This causes the class to laugh at her statement and his pointed response. Moon glances up from his book. Ms. Wilson rapidly blinks her eyes. I'm sorry, River. That was a stupid question, wasn't it? He wants to say, there are no stupid questions, only stupid people, but instead, he only glares at her. Dr. Garcia leans into him and whispers, "Don't be nervous. Just be yourself. Come find me if you need anything." He then nods to Ms. Wilson before turning and leaving the room. Ms. Wilson says, "We haven't seen any new students for nearly 2 years, so do you mind introducing yourself to the class, and then we can get started?" Several students begin asking him questions, but Ms. Wilson stops them by saying, "Give River a chance to introduce himself first. Then, if it's okay with him, I will allow a few minutes of questions before we begin class." She nods her head at River, and then she takes a seat at her desk. River thinks, "Oh shit, I hate speaking in front of the entire class." He looks over the students and comes to the conclusion that there is not one guy here he can't take in a fight, except maybe for Moon. Why am I thinking about fighting? I'm smart, and I've dealt with idiots before. He takes a deep breath and begins. "As you've already heard, my name is River Soul, and I've transferred here from Montreal, Canada. I'm originally from the Eagle Pass area, down by the Mexican border. I was born and lived at the Apache and Comanche reservation about 30 miles north of town. I moved to Canada when I was 13 and lived there until about 5 months ago." He looks at Ms. Wilson and says, "I don't mind answering a few questions as long as they are not too personal." Before she can respond, a guy in the second row says, "Why are you here and not back at the reservation where you belong?" A few of the boys around him laugh out loud. River thinks, "Great. I think I'll refer to him as asshole number 1. I'm sure there will be more to add to the list." Ms. Wilson says, "Junior, if you're just going to be rude, then you can't ask any questions." He gives her a dirty look, but she ignores him. She looks at River and says, "Let me try to ask Junior's question in a different way, River. Why did you leave the reservation when you were 13? And what I would like to know is, if you've been in the area for 5 months, why are you just now starting school? We've been in session for several weeks already." River closes his eyes before saying, "There was a death in my family, so I went to live with my grandmother in Canada. She has dual French and Canadian citizenship, and she works in the diplomatic corps for the Canadian government. In May, she was assigned to the Canadian consulate in Houston. She wants to keep me close, and I've been helping her get settled into her condo in Houston and setting up my own house just outside Grotto." A pretty Latina sitting in the front row asks, "Why aren't you living in Houston?" "If I had a choice between Grotto and Houston, I would choose Houston, hands down." Others around her voice their agreement. River responds, "I thought about it, but the family owns some property not far from here, so I decided to live here for a while until I could decide what I want to do after high school. It took a little longer than expected to get the house finished, and that is the main reason I'm starting school late." Another girl asked, "You're living alone? Is it even legal?" River answers, "In June, I became an emancipated minor." From some of the looks he is receiving, he knows they don't know what that is. So he adds, "That means I've gone to court and have been granted most of the rights an adult has." They still look confused, but at this point he doesn't care. While that discussion was going on, Ms. Wilson was quickly scanning her copy of his transfer records. "I see by your previous grades that you shouldn't have any problems catching up to where we currently are in this class. I have one final question for you before we get started with class. What has been your greatest accomplishment since you first started high school?" River thinks for a second. He could speak Apache and Comanche since he was 3 years old, along with English and Spanish. While in Canada, he learned to speak French and German, but he didn't think this class could understand how speaking anything other than English would be an accomplishment. His grandmother had always taught him to keep his strengths hidden and to only demonstrate them when needed or unexpected. This might be one of those times. He smiles and says, "For the last 2 years, I've been ranked the top junior mixed martial arts athlete in Canada. I think that's something to be proud of." Moon suddenly becomes interested again and looks up from his book. Asshole number 1 quietly spits out, "Shit, not another one." Only his friend sitting next to him, and River can hear him. River can only assume asshole number 1 is also referring to Moon. His smile broadens as he once again makes eye contact with Moon. Over the sudden chatter in the room, Ms. Wilson says, "That is quite an accomplishment." She also appears a little nervous, but she redirects her discomfort into quieting the room. "Thank you, River. Please take a seat in any empty chair and we can get started." As he begins walking down the center aisle between the students' tables, A beautiful blonde girl that looks like the typical small Texas town cheerleader removes her backpack from the chair next to her, indicating that he could sit next to her. He thinks that would be a big mistake and only piss off a bunch of people. He smiles down at her as he walks by and heads to the back of the room where Moon is sitting. He can hear whispers behind him as he places his backpack on the floor and sits at Moon's table, keeping an empty chair between them. Everyone is looking at them in the back of the room. Let the gossip begin. Ms. Wilson loudly clears her throat and says, "Okay, people, eyes up here. We're getting a late start today, and we have a lot to cover." As Ms. Wilson starts her lecture, and most of the students focus their attention on her, Moon slowly closes the book he's been reading and directs a quiet voice toward River. "It might be dangerous to sit here." River smiles and whispers back, "Dangerous for who? Me? Or you?" He glances at the book Moon had been reading. It's in French, and this causes River's smile to grow even bigger.